Listen, man. Shots have been fired. Shots have been fired. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch the internet and see what's transpired, okay? T.I. was at a Falcons game with his son, King. King is the light-skinned one, the one that looks a little bit different. We're going to say that. He looks unique. I think that's more appropriate, right? He looks unique. Now, he's at the Falcons game with King. You guys know King speaks his mind. If you ever seen King during altercations, confrontation, he's a slight bit confrontational. He'll step to it, right? And he, as he likes to refer to, standing on business. That's the term for the week right now, standing on business. That's the new term. He's coined the term. The term has been out here, but King has officially coined the term standing on business. Now, T.I. and King were at a Atlanta Falcons game. Something happened where a confrontation transpired. Somebody was trying to clown. I don't know if they were trying to clown King. I don't know who was trying to clown King. I don't know who initiated it. But somebody was arguing with T.I.'s son, King. And it wasn't really an argument on the man's side. It was an argument on King's side. Somebody was saying something to King that he didn't find to be pleasurable. He didn't find to be, he didn't like it. They were saying something to King. And King took offense to it. All right? Now, King started saying something like he stand on business. It's a term that he kept using, stand on business. Now, when I'm looking at the situation, King's arguing with somebody. Now, I guess the mother, Tiny, and T.I. had to chime in. Tiny and T.I. were in the vicinity in which they had to intervene because King started getting out of his body, all right? King was getting out of his body, out of his element, or maybe he was in his element because you see how King went at it with Charleston White, all right? They actually tried to do something to Charleston White. Boosie's son, Tootie Raw, and King, they tried to do something to Charleston White. Like I said, and I remember one time King was outside of the Waffle House in which he told somebody, stop playing with him, and he went in his book bag as if he was finna, you know what I mean? So I think King, is safe to say, he does stand on business to a certain degree. Now, back to the story. T.I. is at this event, the Falcons game. King is arguing with somebody. And I think the person was trying to question King's credibility as in his street credibility, right? For some reason, King feels compelled to be from the streets. King feels in his heart that he's part of the streets. Now they started questioning his track record. They started questioning King's background. Now King started saying that he stand on business. He kept reciting this, you know I stand on business, you know I stand on business. At one point, his mom Tiny chimes in. Tiny starts speaking to King. Tiny said, King, before Tiny stepped in, somebody said, King, you come from a silver spoon. In which King denounced it. King denounced that he had a silver spoon. King said he ain't grow. He don't know what a silver spoon looked like. Now, you guys know we all seen King. We seen King on that T.I. family show, right? So we all would deem King when we look at King, we think King is a person that grew up with a silver spoon. We're all under the assumption that T.I.'s kids grew up with a silver spoon because we've seen the Harrises, we've seen how they live, right? We know T.I. gets money. You know T.I. is a millionaire plus. You know Tiny gets money. Tiny's from the group Escape. Both of them are celebrities, and both of them have seen some paper, safe to say. So when we see these guys inside their mansions and stuff like that, we assume that King comes from a silver spoon. But contrary to what we think, the general public thinks, King said he doesn't come from a silver spoon. He don't know what a silver spoon looked like. He ain't never ate with that. That's quote unquote what the man said. All right? So with that being said, they're questioning King's background. So now King feels compelled to prove that he's from the streets. And that's where we had an issue at. Hold up. That's when the problem took place. That's when everything went haywire from that point. King was trying to prove that he's from the streets. So now the mother chimed in. Because you know parents, when parents see their kids say they're from the streets and parents know that they get money, parents don't like to hear their kids talk about poverty, knowing that they did what they had to do for their kids to live the lifestyle that they lived, right? Parents feel like they provided their kids with a certain lifestyle, and parents don't like to hear their kids talk about hard times, especially when the parents know that they somewhat gave them a lavish lifestyle. Parents tend to forget about the times in between. The hard times in between, they more focused on the good times. And I can't agree with that, right? But nonetheless, they're telling King that you grew up with a silver spoon. Tiny said, King, you grew up with a silver spoon. T.I. saying, King, you grew up with a silver spoon. T.I. saying, contrary to what you guys are saying, I don't know what a silver spoon looked like. I don't know what that looked like. I ain't never ate with that. That's what King's saying. Now, Tiny chimes in. Tiny tells King. King says, King, let me get this right. King tells Tiny that he grew up with his grandmother. So T.I.'s son, T.I. and Tiny's son King apparently grew up with the grandmother. The grandmother is a white woman. You know, Tiny is half white, half black. Her mother is white, presumably father black. All right. So now King grew up with the grandmother. And according to King, when he used to live with his grandmother, he was facing hard times. According to King, growing up with his grandmother, he's seen poverty. According to King, growing up with his grandmother, he's seen some gangster shit. All right. He even invited them to come to the bando. King invited his father. Do you guys want to come to the bando with me? He offered his father T.I. to come to the bando. So apparently there's a bando on his grandmama's block. Now, Tiny chimes in. Tiny said you grew up with a silver spoon. Tiny said the reason why King went to his grandmother's house because King used to suck on a pacifier. Hold up, man. Hold up. Shots fired. Shots fired. Listen, shots fired. Listen, Tiny was trying to play King. All right? At that point, this is when things started heating up. Tiny was trying to play King. Tiny said, King, the reason why you kept going to my mama's house, the reason you kept going to your grandmother's house, the white lady house, the reason you was going over there is because you like to suck on pacifiers. That's why. And you was 12 years old. May I add? Wait up. Shots fired. 12 years old sucking on pacifiers. Tiny said King was 12 years old sucking on pacifiers. Shots fired. Listen. Now, King never denied that. Never at one point did King deny it. King said, yeah, y'all want to talk about the pacifier, but y'all not talking about the real. This is what King's talking about. So King said he grew up at his grandmother's house and he's seen poverty. T.I. chimed in. So at this point, King is going back and forth with his mama. Now T.I. chimes in. T.I. tells King, King, have you ever grew up with a roach on your face? Yeah, he asked him. He said, have you ever grew up with a roach running across your face? Now, you guys know if you're from the hood, if you've seen poverty, you've seen roaches. If you ain't never seen roaches, you ain't never seen poverty. You ever cut on the kitchen light and see over 15, 20 roaches? Have you ever cut on your kitchen light and see over 20 roaches? The big ones. You know Florida, the big ones, the palmetto bugs, the big roaches? You know the flying roaches? You know how Florida got the flying roaches? Have you ever cut on your kitchen light and seen roaches? That's what I'm asking you, my good people. This is poverty. And we're not bragging about poverty. We're not condoning poverty. We're just, remember, when you're telling the truth is not a diss. The truth is not clout chasing. You can't take the truth as disrespect. He's just telling the man, have you ever seen roaches? Has a roach ever crawled across your face? And you know what King replied? King replied, and he said, that's not the goal. Fact, though. That's the fact. That's not the goal. The goal is to get paper. The goal is not to be in poverty. The goal is to live in a house with no roaches. That's the goal. But you have to reach to that goal. You have to reach that point. All right? So King is going back and forth with T.I. to the point where King referred to his father as a nigger. He said, nigger. King was out his body. Hold up, man. King was out his body. A lot of people see the way King was speaking to T.I. People say they would have flipped their kid on their head. They said they would have took their kid to the back of they was at the stadium where the Falcons play. Somebody said they would have took him to the corner where there's no cameras and gave that boy the beats, handled him. Most fathers would have definitely put their hands on King. Now, to T.I.'s defense, T.I. did kind of put King, I don't know if he had him in a headlock, but he definitely was scuffling with King at one point. T.I. quoted saying, "You can't do nothing with me." T.I. told King at one point, "You can't do nothing with me." So he did handle him slightly, but to be quite honest with you, I don't think it was enough, but maybe it was enough. Maybe it was enough. Maybe violence wasn't the answer, all right? Especially in the public eye. That whole situation, just from the breakdown of the whole situation, this thing happened in the public eye. Everybody was watching in audience. Everybody was watching in awe. Everybody was basically an audience. There was an audience around them. So this is father, son, and mother going at it in front of everybody. That's really embarrassing. That's embarrassing on all parties, not just King's part embarrassing, but it's embarrassing to T.I. and it's embarrassing to Tiny. And that's what T.I. was saying. You are embarrassing yourself. And in turn, you're embarrassing your whole family. All right? So apparently King is under assumption that he's from the streets. Apparently he believes that he comes from hard times, though he's never had a roach run across his face. He's never had a roach run across his face. But he believes that he's from hard times. Now, King, at one point, King said, "You guys had me behind the gate. I didn't want to be behind the gate." I'm quoting King now. King said he didn't want to be behind the gate. King said he wanted to get from behind that gate. So King didn't want to be with the silver spoon in the mansion and all that. King was compelled to go to the streets. Now, I don't know what makes him compelled. There's some obvious factors that you could factor in. The point that King fathers from the streets. So you see kids, I noticed that. I noticed that kids, the younger generation, your nephews, your kids, they want to emulate Pops, especially if Pops is from the streets and they come from silver spoons. Because something about the streets is like, it gives you your stripes, right? You're battle tested. You're battle tested. It's messed up, but it's the truth. And a lot of these kids, they feel like because they're not tested, they don't have those stripes, they feel like they're not valid. They feel like their gangster's not valid because they do want to be gangster as opposed to just being a man. Like as if being a man is not enough. As if being a man is not standing on business. These kids want to be perceived as gangsters, right? Because you know the lifestyle of a gangster is people are amazed by that. People are amazed by the lifestyle of a gangster, all right? To the point it becomes interesting. And to the point they make it their goal now. They want to emulate the gangsters. They want the same accolades as the gangsters. They want the same respect that the gangsters get. Because gangsters do get a certain type of respect as opposed to a kid with a silver spoon. But what people fail to realize is, you know what comes before being a gangster? A man. A lot of people fail to realize, you know what comes before being a gangster or a thug? A man. You can't never put no gangster before the man. Some niggas are gangsters, but they're not a real man. Some niggas be thugging, but they not a real man. A real man handles his business. A real man has integrity. Because you a thug, that don't mean you have to have integrity. Because you a gangster, that don't mean that you have to have integrity. But a man has to possess those two things. That's why women be like, oh, you got to be a real man. Not to say it like that, but they're telling the truth. The man comes before the gangster, the man comes before the thug, period. But these kids fail to realize that. Because they're so infatuated with the gangster lifestyle. And you know that gangster lifestyle, you know how they display it. You see it on TV shows, movies. You know what I mean? People admire that lifestyle. The lifestyle is fabricated at certain points. All right? So this is what T.I.'s son wants to emulate. He wants to emulate a gangster. King wants to be a gangster, nonetheless. But I don't think he meets the criteria of a gangster. He doesn't meet the criteria of a gangster. He don't check off all the boxes of a gangster. I think King is more of a man than a gangster. Because to King's credit, to T.I.'s son credit, I think he would stand on business. I think that jit would shoot somebody. We don't want to see him shoot nobody. No, we don't want to see that. But I think he would stand on business. I think he would step to a nigga. I believe King would step to a nigga. I truly, truly, truly believe that. Right? But King wants to be a gangster. And that's where he failed at. King, leave that gangster shit alone, King. Leave that gangster shit. That gangster shit is fabricated. Trust me. 80% of these niggas that saying that they're gangsters would snitch. 80% of these niggas that claim to be gangsters don't have no integrity. Because you're a gangster don't mean you have to be honorable. Because you a gangster don't mean that you have to take care of your kids. Because you a gangster don't mean that you have to be manly and do manly shit. Because you a gangster don't mean you have to get up and work every day from the sweat of your brow. Let me tell you, being a gangster that shit is not, I'm not gonna say it's a myth, but it's fabricated. And that's what people gotta understand. It's only 15 to 10% of the gangsters that are actually solid. I'm just keeping it all the way a stack with you guys. 80% of gangsters are bullshit. What's the sense of being a gangster if you got no integrity? What's the sense of being a gangster if you don't take care of your kids? What's the sense of being a gangster if you're a liar? What's the sense of being a gangster if you're not honorable? People just think that being a gangster is being foul, it's being cutthroat, it's killing somebody. No, it's about killing somebody for the right reasons. A lot of people are gangsters for the wrong reasons. They're killing people for the wrong reasons. So everybody's chasing that gangster shit. They don't know how the gangster shit is exaggerated. They don't know how that gangster shit is fabricated. 80 to 85% of gangsters are not like that. And I mean all the way around. So that's what I'm telling you. The man comes before the gangster. Being a man comes before the gangster. Because being a man, you have to be honorable. You're not considered a real man if you're not honorable. You're not considered a real man if you don't take accountability. A gangster ain't got to take accountability. Gangsters snitch out here. A gangster will set you up. Gangsters get jealous and set you up. A gangster will do something to you if his bitch like you. Gangsters don't have to have integrity. A man does. A man has to have accountability. A man has to take care of his wife and his kids. A gangster don't got to take care of his wife and kids. A gangster don't have to be honorable. The man comes before the gangster. That's what people don't understand. Man comes before the gangster. 85% of gangsters, I don't even respect them. Some gangsters they don't even go at worthy opponents. Some gangsters just bully people because they have the advantage. You know some gangsters, a lot of gangsters. Let me say about some gangsters. Some gangsters got issues with some real niggas, and they'll never take it towards that real nigga. But guess what? When they see somebody that they can measure, they could deem to be inferior, when they know they can get away with it, they get super gangster. You ever see that? You ever seen a gangster get gangster with somebody that's weak, but when somebody that's of their stature or higher, they fold, they tail, they get curved? That's what a gangster is. 85% of gangsters are bullshit. They don't have no honor. They don't have to be manly. To be a gangster, you don't have to be manly. You don't have to be hold yourself accountable. You don't have to tell the truth. A gangster could be a lion, disrespectful, low down son of a bitch. That part. The man comes before the gangster. And that's what people fail to realize. So when you're kicking that gangster shit, that's why a lot of niggas, when they go through their gangster phase, they be like, damn, they denounce that shit. That's why 85% of niggas that was screaming that gangster shit, they find God when they reach the ages of 40 and up and 30 and up. They start finding God and they start dispelling that gangster shit because they wasn't real to the gangster shit, or they noticed that gangsters wasn't keeping it real. So I think King, T.I.'s son King, he needs some intervention. I wish I could speak to King. I wish I could speak to him. King, you chasing some shit that's fabricated. You chasing some shit that's exaggerated. The gangster lifestyle is exaggerated. You don't have to stand on business when you're a gangster, really. You don't. The only thing about a gangster, you know what they're going to tell you about a gangster? Oh, you got to kill somebody. But you also got to be willing to accept the consequences of killing somebody. When a gangster ain't got no lawyer money, you got to sit in jail. When somebody's snitching on you, witnesses, a gangster got to take care of that. Got to take care of the witnesses and all that. All right? The gangster lifestyle. And then you upholding this gangster shit, knowing that 85% of the niggas that's playing the same game you're playing, they're not playing by the rules. 85% of gangsters don't play by the rules. I had to learn that as a kid. Though you're standing on business, your comrades are not going to stand on business. Your colleagues, your gangster colleagues, they're not going to stand on business. Remember, I told you that. All right? So what's bigger than a gangster? A man. Be a man first. Tell the truth, being a gangster is a cop-out. A lot of niggas is not men. It's harder to be a man than a gangster. Let's get to that. Let's talk about that. It's harder to be a man than a gangster. A man has to hold himself accountable. A man got to take care of his family. A man got to stand on business. A man got to exude integrity. A man has to be humble. A man has to humble himself. There's so many things that a man has to do that the requirements to be a man, to be a true man, quote unquote, a real man. In order to be a real man, you have to do a lot of things. You have to uphold a lot of things that are in the realm of integrity. You got to do things that most people would not be willing to do. You got to do things that most people are not, they don't have the strength to do. They don't have the resiliency. They don't have the endurance to make it through. All right? A man has to sacrifice. A lot of gangsters are not going to sacrifice. Some gangsters will take from their friends, will kill their friends. A man is not going to kill his friend unless it's warranted. He's going to try his best not to do something like that. All right? I don't want to stay too long on that. No doubt. But people definitely need to speak to King. Somebody needs to speak to King. Somebody who's from the streets that can dispel some of his misconceptions, because he has some misconceptions about being a gangster. And he's disrespecting his parents for something that is fabricated. King is disrespecting his family and disrespecting himself for something that's exaggerated. For something that most people, when they get to the ages of 40 and up, they don't even want to be gangsters no more. They don't even respect the gangster shit no more. Nor do they even claim to be gangsters no more. All right? So once again, the man comes before the gangster. That part. All right, you guys, make sure you guys are hitting like. Make sure you guys are sharing this podcast. Once I told you guys again, this is the most dangerous podcast on God's green earth. Remember, I told you, nobody's going to give it up like this. You have to live that lifestyle to talk about this. Most people can't talk the talk I talk because they ain't walk the walk I walk. Period. Point blank. But I'm a sacrificial lamb. I'm gonna tell you guys everything. I'm gonna tell you guys the rights and wrongs. I'm gonna even tell you guys my mistakes. I'm gonna be vulnerable and tell you guys my mistakes. Okay. Nonetheless, I think we're gonna end it off with this right here. Oh yeah, I want to speak about one last thing. One last thing before we leave the building. I want to speak about this Nardo Wick situation. All right. As of recently, Nardo Wick, there was an altercation that took place with Nardo Wick and his bodyguards. All right.